that focus on security in the country, the state of insecurity, I suppose, in many instances. The report into last year's July unrest has found that there are serious shortcomings when it comes to South Africa's security. President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to outline measures during the State of the Nation address on Thursday. Political science professor Bheki Mngomezulu says Ramaphosa needs to be honest with South Africans when it comes to security concerns. He highlights several incidents, including the Parliament fire and the blaze at Waterkloof Air Base. Mngomezulu joins me now to take that conversation a bit further. It was a piece that you wrote on Independent Online there, Professor Mngomezulu, and in essence you are saying that there are many issues jostling for the President's attention and the limited resources that we have, but many of them are long-standing and have been approached in a gradual manner. And you argue that this one has to be urgent, the issue of security in the country. Why?
No, thank you very much, Mr. Simelane. Indeed, we know that in any country, once there is a security breach, obviously then it means that the head of state has to put everything aside and attend to that matter. We have a recent case in the DRC, for instance, where the president had to cut his trip short to come back to address what appeared to be a security concern. So in the South African context, as you said, earlier, introduction, last year in July, we had commotion in the country whereby we saw different incidences in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng and some parts of Mpumalanga. And then one would have expected that such incidents would have sent a warning to the country that we have to up our game. But then seemingly we don't seem to have learned from that, as we have seen in the recent fires that we have seen throughout the country in Parliament, and then of course the smashing of the Constitutional Court building, the fire at Waterkloof, even though officials say there is nothing sinister about it. But then recently, the cathedral in Cape Town. So that tells you there is something happening which our security cluster has to pick up very quickly so that we don't just react on incidences once they've happened. So the president has to talk about this and be honest about himself, and then of course be honest to the country, because this is priority number one. If we're not safe, nothing else will happen.
Is it your sense in making that call, Professor Mngomezulu, that we're dealing here with something ominous, something that should worry all of us, something big that is happening perhaps in the background? Or are we dealing with what the late Hugh Masekela would call marauding gangs of no particular origin, as in, one incident there, a person seeing an opportunity and smashing windows at the Concord, or starting a fire at the St. George's Cathedral, and an incident where it's said there was nothing sinister at Waterkloof? Or are we dealing with something that should really be of concern for us all, in that it's systematic?
No, my brother, to be honest with you, I think that we have to face this situation head on. It's true that you might have crimes that are opportunistic. But in this case, we're not just talking about any normal crime. We're talking about someone who bans national key points, in this case, Parliament. This Parliament has been in existence since the 19th century. Throughout colonialism, throughout apartheid, nothing of this nature ever happened. Only now that we see Parliament going on fire. And then the other incidences that we have just referred to, in fact, reflect on the magnitude of this situation, so that we can then come to the conclusion that these are not just isolated cases, but it's something that is building up on something more serious. So the sooner we arrest the situation, the better. If we are complacent and then propagate the view that these are isolated cases, they are unrelated, we still have to investigate, by the time we wake up, this country will be on fire. So we better act now while we still can than wait for a time when we will not even be in a position to address the issue.
Lastly then, Cyril Ramaphosa may well turn around and say, I instituted a cabinet reshuffle, I took the whole issue of state security back to the presidency and recently appointed Mondli Gungubele to have oversight over it. We just had the report coming out from a panel that was reviewing last year's unrest. What more? What more do you South Africans want me to do? What would be your answer? What more? What is this more that needs to be done?
Coincidentally, when state security was placed under the presidency, I was one of the people who raised issues about that, because I was linking it to the previous president, President Zuma, whereby people were saying that state security has been politicized. And I was asking myself the question, if indeed that was the case, does then taking this state security agency and then putting it under the presidency solve the problem, or does it in fact give even more ammunition to those who are saying that the institution has been politicized? Because if you place it under the presidency, are you going to deal with this political influence? Those are some of the questions that remain unanswered. We appreciate what the president has done, but I don't think that we've done enough. We should have gone to Israel, we should have gone to Egypt, we should have gone to Burundi, we should have gone to Zimbabwe to see how state security is operating, and then try to learn from them and then do things differently.
All right, Bheki Mngomezulu, I've got to thank you for your time. Of course, some of the complexities of the nations that you mentioned are very different from ours, particularly the whole constitutional schemes and human rights cultures, etc., etc. But that's a debate for another day. For now, I've got to thank you for your time and inputs here on All Angles on eNCA. That's political science professor there, Bheki Mngomezulu, weighing in on the security situation in the country. Still ahead.